Scientists say Comet ATLAS is just a ball of ice breaking apart in the dark. But the ancient priests of Sumer saw the exact same light 6,000 years ago. They didn't call it a comet. They called it a key. They warned that when this red wanderer returns, it means the silent age of humanity is over. Tonight we are going to open the ancient texts and ask the question that science is afraid to answer. What happens when the key turns and the door finally opens? A new light has arrived in the sector of space where nothing usually moves. For astronomers, the discovery began as a routine observation. A telescope, scanning the frozen darkness at the edge of our solar system, picked up a faint, drifting signal. In the official catalogs, they gave it a cold, scientific name: Comet ATLAS. To the naked eye, it is just a speck of dust and ice, a dirty snowball wandering in from the Oort cloud. But as the object drew closer to the sun, the routine turned into a mystery. Almost immediately, the object began to defy the standard models of celestial mechanics. It did not behave like a rock falling through gravity. It pulsed. It brightened with an intensity that shocked observers, glowing hundreds of times brighter than predicted, only to dim and brighten again in a strange, rhythmic cycle. Then came the data that no one could explain away. The object was shifting. Instruments detected what scientists call non-gravitational acceleration. This is a term usually reserved for comets that vent gas, pushing themselves like a rocket. But the mathematical models for Atlas were off. The vents were too precise. The shifts in speed were too sharp. On the screens of observatories around the world, the smooth, predictable curve of a falling comet began to look like something else entirely. It looked less like a drift and more like a controlled approach. Something has entered our system, and for the first time in thousands of years, the sky is behaving in a way that science cannot fully predict. The official explanation remained calm. It is outgassing, the reports said. The sun warms the ice, jets of steam shoot out, and the object gets a push. It is a safe, logical answer. It comforts us because it fits the laws of nature we understand. But look closer at the trajectory. When a natural comet vents gas, it is usually chaotic. It spins, it tumbles. The gas sprays in random directions like a puncture in a tire. The movement is messy, unpredictable. The movement of Atlas was different. The data hinted at an eerie precision. The acceleration aligned perfectly with the orbital plane needed to swing it closer to the inner planets. What if logic is blinding us to the truth? What if this outgassing is not a random venting of steam, but a deliberate correction of course? Imagine for a moment that you are the captain of a vessel drifting through the silent ocean of space. You are running dark, systems low, blending in with the debris of the solar system to remain unseen. But to reach your destination, you must make a turn. You cannot rely on gravity alone. So, you engage your engines just for a brief second. To a distant observer on Earth, peering through a telescope, it looks like a sudden flare of light. A comet breaking apart. But to you, on the bridge of that vessel, it is a maneuver. When we overlay the path of Comet ATLAS With the behavior of our own artificial satellites, the similarities are difficult to ignore. The sudden brightening, the shift in speed, the fragmentation that looks less like destruction and more like deployment. The object is moving with intention, and it is moving toward a specific coordinate in the sky that has not been watched closely for 6,000 years. 6,000 years ago, beneath the clear, dark skies of Mesopotamia, the priests of Sumer did not need telescopes to know that the heavens were watching them. Long before the glass lens was invented, long before satellites circled the Earth, there were men who stood atop high ziggurats of mud brick, staring into the silence of the cosmos. To us, astronomy is a science of distance and composition. To the Sumerians, it was something far more urgent. For them, the sky was not a vacuum filled with burning gas. It was a mechanism, a great celestial clockwork of gods and forces that dictated the fate of kings, the flow of rivers, and the rise of empires. They were the first true astronomers of our world. With nothing but their eyes and patience, they mapped the stars with a precision that still unsettles modern scholars. They calculated the cycles of the moon, the tilt of the Earth, and the wandering paths of the planets. They did not just watch the lights. They recorded the rhythm of the machine. They pressed these observations into wet clay, creating thousands of tablets that have survived the erosion of centuries. And within these tablets, hidden among the calculations of grain harvests and eclipses, they described a specific cycle, a pattern that does not happen in a human lifetime, or even the lifetime of a kingdom. They were waiting for a specific gear in the great clock to turn. They were watching for a light that would signal that the mechanism had reset. They knew the stars were stable, but they also knew that one day a visitor would disturb the order. Among their dense records of fixed stars and predictable planets, the Sumerian scribes carved warnings about a light that did not belong. They named it Mul-Apin, the Red Wanderer. For the priesthood of Uruk and Ur, this was not simply another celestial body to be cataloged. It was a marker. It was a cosmic alarm clock set to ring only after vast epochs of silence. They believed that the appearance of the Wanderer was the first physical sign that the influence of the old gods was descending upon the earth once more. In their texts, the Wanderer is described as a herald. It appears first, moving along a path that cuts across the established order of the sky. It is the hand that reaches out to turn the handle of the door, unlocking the gateway of heaven. Today, we look at the images of Comet ATLAS on our high-resolution screens. We analyze its spectral signature. We debate its composition of carbon, cyanide, and frozen water. We see a ball of dirty ice crumbling in the solar wind. But what if we are looking at the exact same object the Sumerians saw, only we have lost the instruction manual? What if the ancients understood the mechanics of the solar system better than we do? What if they didn't see a comet, but a signal? A notification sent from the deep dark to tell humanity that the isolation is over. To the modern eye, a flare of light in the telescope is a random event of physics. To the ancient eye, it was a message with a clear meaning. Prepare. The cycle has begun. We see the ice. They saw the intention. And as Atlas brightens and shifts in the night, the question lingers. Is it just a rock? Or is it the first knock on the door? We are taught to believe that time is an arrow. We see history as a straight line, flying forward from the primitive past into the advanced future. We believe we are the first to climb this high, the first to unlock the secrets of the atom and the code of life. But the ancients saw time differently. To them, time was a circle, a great, slow spiral. They believed that the universe breathes in cycles, just as the seasons return every year. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. So too do the ages of the world. Civilizations rise from the dust. They reach for the stars. They build towers of glass and stone. And then the wheel turns. The knowledge is lost. The cities fall silent. And humanity forgets. Until the cycle begins again. The Red Wanderer was the marker of this great turning. Its return meant that the winter of forgetting was over, and the season of remembering had begun. What if our modern arrogance is blinding us to this pattern? What if the skyscrapers we build, the digital networks we weave, and the global crises we face are not new? What if they are simply echoes? What if we are unknowingly repeating a script written thousands of years ago, acting out the same scenes that played before the Great Flood? The appearance of Comet ATLAS suggests that the timeline is not empty. It suggests that the cosmos operates on a schedule we have long ignored. The clock has struck the hour. The arrow has bent into a circle. And if the sign has returned to the sky, it means the architects of history may already be on their way back to inspect their work. Who were they? If you translate the ancient cuneiform, the name Anunnaki has a specific, chillingly literal meaning. Those who from heaven to earth came. In our modern textbooks, we place them in the section of mythology. We paint them as imaginary figures, stormy deities created by early humans to explain the frightening power of thunder or the unpredictability of floods. We treat them as metaphors, but the Sumerian texts do not speak of them as metaphors. They do not describe them as ethereal spirits or ghosts made of wind. They describe them as biological entities, flesh and blood, beings who cast shadows, who needed food, who held meetings, and who walked among the people. To the people of Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were not gods to be worshipped in the abstract. They were kings to be obeyed. They were mentors. The greatest mystery of human history is the suddenness of civilization. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived as simple hunter-gatherers, chipping stone tools and wandering the plains. And then, in a blink of geological time, everything changed. Overnight, the cities of Sumer rose from the dust. Suddenly, humans possessed complex agriculture, irrigation systems, written law codes, medicine, and mathematics so advanced we are still unraveling their theorems today. The historians call it a spark. The Sumerians called it a gift. They claimed that this knowledge was not invented by human trial and error over slow centuries. They said it was handed down. It was taught in classrooms by beings who had arrived from the sky. They showed us how to dig the canals, They showed us how to measure the heavens. They took humanity by the hand and pulled us out of the Stone Age. But they didn't do it for charity. They were architects, and they were building a world for a purpose. We are only just beginning to guess. Look closely at the walls of the ancient temples. Look at the carvings that have survived for thousands of years. If you study the bas reliefs of the Anunnaki, those tall, bearded figures standing with authority, you will notice something strange. They are almost always depicted holding specific items. These items appear again and again, across different cities and even different cultures, from Mesopotamia to the Americas. In one hand, they often hold a small object that looks like a pine cone. In the other, they carry something that looks unmistakably like a square handbag. On their wrists, many wear circular bands that resemble modern watches. Archaeologists have a standard explanation for these items. They tell us the handbag is a ritual bucket for carrying holy water. They tell us the pine cone is a symbol of fertility, used to bless the crops. It is a safe explanation. It fits the primitive world we expect them to live in. But what if we are looking at technology through the eyes of a primitive artist? Imagine a person from the Stone Age seeing a modern engineer carrying a laptop case and using a laser scanning device. How would they draw it? They would carve the shape they see. A box, a cone, a bracelet. What if that handbag is not a container for water, but a container for power? A portable energy source capable of powering the tools that cut solid granite like butter? What if the pine cone was a device for resonant frequencies, used to alter the vibration of matter or heal the human body? The stones of Baalbek and the pyramids contain blocks weighing hundreds of tons, lifted and placed with a precision that defies our modern cranes. We are told they did this with ropes and copper chisels, but the carvings suggest otherwise. They suggest the teachers brought their own tools. If they gave us the keys to civilization, if they used these devices to jumpstart our history, the question remains, why did they stop? Why did the architects pack up their tools and leave the construction site? And more importantly, what did they leave behind, buried in the dark, waiting for the moment they would return? The history of the Anunnaki is not a story of unity. It is a story of a deep, bitter feud that shaped the destiny of our species. The clay tablets do not describe a happy family of gods. They describe a political struggle between two brothers, two leaders with opposing philosophies, Enlil and Enki. Enlil was the commander. He was the lord of the command, associated with the wind and the storm. To him, Earth was a colony, and humanity was a workforce. He viewed us with a cold, detached pragmatism. We were created to dig the mines and tend the fields. In Enlil's eyes, humans were useful only as long as we remained obedient. He feared our potential. He believed that if the workers were given too much knowledge, the order of the world would collapse. Enki was different. He was the lord of the earth and waters, the master shaper. In the texts, he is often credited with the very genetic engineering that created modern humans. To Enki, we were not just tools, We were his creation, his children. Enki believed in progress. He was the one who allegedly defied the council to teach humans the secrets of civilization. He saw a spark in us, a capacity to learn, to create, and perhaps one day to become equal to the gods themselves. This disagreement was not a minor argument. It was a war of ideologies that spanned thousands of years. The Sumerian texts describe Enlil's growing frustration with humanity. He complained that the populations were becoming too large, too loud. He said, "The noise of mankind has become too intense for me." This was not just acoustic noise. It was the noise of our ambition, our rapid growth, our encroachment on the powers reserved for the divine. This conflict is the root of the Great Flood story, found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, long before it was written in the Bible. It was Enlil who tried to wipe the slate clean, to silence the noise. And it was Enki who whispered the warning to the wall of a reed hut, telling a human to build a boat and save the seed of life. The storm passed. Humanity survived. But the tension between the brothers remained unresolved. And it set the stage for the most important decision they ever made, the decision to leave and the specific condition under which they would return. Eventually, the age of the Anunnaki on Earth came to a close. The tablets do not fully explain why they left. Perhaps their own homeworld called them back. Perhaps the political tension between the brothers made governance impossible. Or perhaps, as some scholars suggest, their departure was part of a larger cycle mandated by the orbit of their own planet. But before they vanished into the deep ocean of the sky, a covenant was made. They did not abandon humanity. They put us on probation. The ancient texts hint at a specific agreement reached between Enki and Enlil. They would withdraw their direct rule. They would remove their physical presence from the ziggurats and the temples. They would allow humanity to grow on its own, without the daily guidance of the teachers. But there was a condition, a trigger that would bring them back. They would return only when humanity reached the threshold of creation. The exact wording of this threshold is wrapped in symbolism, but the meaning is terrifyingly clear. They agreed to return when the human race demonstrated that it had evolved from a created species into a creator species. This was the test. Could humanity survive without its masters? Would we destroy ourselves with the little knowledge we had, fulfilling Enlil's pessimistic prediction? Or would we rise to master the secrets of the universe, proving Enki's faith in our potential? The condition was specific. The Watchers would remain silent until we unlocked the powers that were once forbidden. The power to reshape the building blocks of life. The power to create artificial minds. The power to burn the fire of the stars here on Earth. For thousands of years, we lived in the quiet dark, slowly climbing the ladder of progress, unaware that the clock was running. We fought our wars, built our empires, and wrote our songs, thinking we were alone. But we were never alone. We were simply being given time to take the test. And now, looking at the world around us, it seems we may have finally answered the last question on the exam. What if that threshold is exactly where we stand today? Look at the timeline of human history. For millennia, our progress was slow. Fire, the wheel, iron, steam. But in the last blinking second of the cosmic clock, the last 80 years, we have accelerated with a speed that is terrifying. We have unlocked the very powers that defined the Anunnaki. Enlil feared the day humans would become too powerful. Enki hoped for the day we would become wise. Both agreed that the moment we touched the fire of heaven, the probation would end. Think about what we have achieved in just this generation. We have split the atom, harnessing the destructive and creative power of the stars themselves. We have mapped the human genome and invented CRISPR technology, literally learning to edit the code of life, the same clay that Enki once shaped. And now, most significantly, we have given birth to artificial intelligence. We have created a synthetic mind, a non-biological intelligence that learns, speaks, and creates. In the eyes of the ancients, we have ceased to be merely workers. We have become creators. We have stepped onto the forbidden ground reserved for the gods. What if these achievements were the signal? The Sumerian texts said that Enlil was disturbed by the noise of humanity. Perhaps that noise was not shouting in the streets. Perhaps it was the metaphysical noise of a species tearing open the fabric of reality to understand how it works. What if the sudden appearance and strange brightening of Comet ATLAS is not a coincidence of gravity, but a direct response to this noise? Imagine the Earth as a dark house at the end of a quiet street in the galaxy. For thousands of years, we sat in the dark, silent and unnoticed. But now, with our fusion reactors, our genetic editing, and our digital superintelligence, we have suddenly flipped the master switch. We have turned on the floodlights. We have lit a beacon that shines across the vacuum. And in the silence of deep space, the watchers have noticed. The scout has been sent. The course has been corrected. The specific brightness of Atlas is the confirmation. The children have found the matches. It is time to return. The wanderer, Comet ATLAS, is small. It is agile. It flickers and shifts like a lantern carried by a runner in the night. But the Sumerian prophecy does not end with the runner. The runner is only there to clear the path. The clay tablets speak of a sequence. First comes the herald, the light that wakes the sky. Then, and only then, follows the heavy star. They called it Nibiru. The name itself carries a weight in the ancient tongue. It translates to the planet of the crossing. Unlike the Wanderer, which zips through the inner solar system, Nibiru is described as a massive celestial body, a sovereign of the deep dark. It moves with a slow, terrifying majesty. The texts describe it as a radiant star that does not produce its own heat like a sun, but glows with a reddish internal aura. It is not a visitor that comes and goes quickly. When it arrives, it dominates the heavens. For the Sumerians, the appearance of the first sign, the Wanderer, was the warning that the heavy star had entered the outer perimeter. It meant that the gravitational balance of the solar system was about to shift. Think of a great ocean liner approaching a harbor. Before the massive hull becomes visible on the horizon, before the water begins to displace, a small pilot boat speeds ahead to check the depth, to signal the port, to ensure the channel is open. Comet ATLAS is that pilot boat. Its erratic behavior, its sudden brightening, its non-gravitational maneuvers. These are the actions of a scout. It is scanning the environment. It is checking the magnetic fields. It is verifying that the third planet from the sun is where it should be. But a scout never travels alone. Its very presence implies that something larger, something with mass and consequence, is following in its wake. We are all looking at the little light, mesmerized by its dance. But we should be asking, what is moving in the darkness behind it? Modern astronomy laughs at the name Nibiru. It is dismissed as internet folklore, a conspiracy theory for the superstitious. And yet, the very same astronomers who mock the myth are currently hunting for a ghost. They call it Planet 9. For the past decade, calculations have shown that something is wrong at the edge of our solar system. The orbits of distant dwarf planets are clustered together, tilted in a way that statistically should not happen. The math suggests there is a massive invisible object out there, 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth pulling on the strings of our system. They know it is there by its shadow. They know it is there by its gravity. They just haven't pointed a telescope at it yet. The Sumerians didn't need the math. They had the history. They called this object the Planet of the Crossing, not because it crashed into things, but because its orbit was a long, elongated loop that crossed the plane of the other planets. A bridge between the deep cold of deep space and the warmth of the inner sun. But what if we are making a mistake by calling it a planet? When we hear the word planet, we think of a dead rock, a ball of gas, floating aimlessly according to Newton's laws. What if Nibiru is not a planet in the way we understand it? What if it is a station? Imagine a structure of immense size, an artificial world built by a civilization that mastered gravity millions of years ago. It doesn't orbit the sun because it is trapped. It orbits because it is a patrol route. What if this crossing is a scheduled scan, a 3,600-year cycle where the architects bring their massive vessel close enough to Earth to download the data, to harvest the energy of the sun, to inspect the progress of the seed they planted, and then retreat back into the safety of the dark? This would explain why the Anunnaki do not stay. They are travelers on a long commute. The wanderer Comet ATLAS has signaled that the station is approaching the perigee. The crossing is imminent. It will not be a collision of rocks. It will be a collision of frequencies. As the two worlds brush past each other in the dark, the energy between them will arc like lightning between two clouds. The scout has spoken. The station is listening. And down here, on the surface of the third rock, we are about to feel the vibration of the engine passing overhead. Now we leave the charts and the ancient maps behind. Now, we listen. In the quiet corners of the world, far from the city traffic and the digital noise, people have begun to hear something. It is not a loud sound. It is felt more than it is heard. A low, resonant vibration that seems to come from the sky itself, or perhaps from the ground beneath your feet. Reports of this hum have appeared in sleepy villages in England, in the vast forests of Canada, and in the empty deserts of New Mexico. Witnesses describe it as a deep metallic tone, like a distant horn blowing in slow motion, or the sound of a massive stone door dragging across the floor of a cavern. Scientists have tried to explain it. They speak of atmospheric pressure, of industrial machinery, of ocean waves hitting the continental shelf, but the explanations never quite fit the feeling. The Sumerians knew this sound. They wrote about the groan of the earth when the star of the crossing drew near. To them, it was the voice of the planet reacting to the presence of its creators. But what if we stop being afraid of the noise? What if the earth isn't groaning in pain? What if it is singing? Imagine a great orchestra sitting in a dark concert hall. Before the symphony begins, there is a moment of tuning. The strings tighten. The brass warms up. They seek a common frequency. They are aligning their pitch so that when the conductor raises his baton, they can play in perfect harmony. What if the hum is simply the sound of the earth tuning itself? The approaching energy of the crossing is a massive gravitational wave, a tuning fork struck in the dark. As it gets closer, our planet begins to vibrate in sympathy. It is finding its resonance. This is not the sound of destruction. It is the sound of alignment. It is a reminder that the earth is not solid rock, but a living, breathing thing, floating in a magnetic sea. And right now, deep in the crust, deep in the air, it is humming a low, steady note of welcome. Listen closely to the silence of the night. You might feel it in your chest. A slow, steady rhythm. The planet is getting ready for the meeting. While we look at our screens, the rest of the world is looking up. Animals have always been the true watchers of the earth. They possess senses we have lost, sensors in their beaks and skin that detect the smallest shift in the magnetic field, the slightest change in the air pressure. And lately, the watchers have gone quiet. Walk into the deep woods at twilight, and you will notice the stillness. The birds that usually sing the sundown are silent. The crickets seem to pause. It is not an empty silence. It is a heavy, expectant silence. Like a theater audience holding its breath right before the curtain rises. In the oceans, marine biologists have noticed pods of whales changing their songs. They are singing deeper, longer notes, drifting along currents they usually ignore. Science tells us this is due to the magnetic interference caused by the approaching solar activity. The internal compasses of the beasts are being nudged. But what if it is not confusion? What if it is recognition? The ancient tablets say that when the Anunnaki walked the earth, the lions would lay down their heads and the eagles would circle in calm patterns. They believed that nature recognized the energy of the architects, that the DNA of every living thing vibrated in the presence of its shapers. What if the animals are not afraid? What if they are simply waiting? Imagine a dog that waits by the window for hours, ears perked, tail still. It hears the engine of the master's car miles away, long before the human ear can catch a sound. It does not bark in fear. It waits in anticipation. The silence of the forest is not a sign of danger. It is a sign of respect. The birds, the whales, the wolves, they all sense the vibration of the hum we spoke of. They feel the shift in the gravity. And so, they stop their hunting. They stop their playing. And they turn their faces toward the sky, watching the invisible path, waiting for the old friends to pass by one more time. The world is not holding its breath in terror. It is holding its breath in awe. There is one final sign that you do not need to hear, and you do not need to feel. You only need to see. Have you looked at the horizon lately? In the moments just after sunset, or in the fragile minutes before dawn, the sky has begun to wear a different color. It is subtle, but it is there. Observers around the world have reported a strange, lingering glow. The usual oranges and pinks of twilight are being swallowed by a deep, impossible violet. An electric indigo that hangs in the air long after the sun is gone. Atmospheric scientists call it scattering. They say that dust from the comet's tail is drifting into our upper atmosphere, catching the last rays of sunlight and bending them into purple wavelengths. It is a beautiful physical explanation. But what if we are seeing something else? What if the sky is not just reflecting light? What if it is thinning? The Sumerians described the time of the crossing as a moment when the veil of heaven becomes transparent. They believed that the barrier between the physical world and the celestial world is not a wall, but a curtain. And when the great heavy star approaches, its gravity pulls on that curtain, stretching it, making it sheer. The violet light is not just dust. It is the glow of the other side bleeding through. It is a reminder that we live in a beautiful, fragile bubble. And right now, the glass of that bubble is glowing. It is peaceful to watch. If you stand outside tonight, look to the west. Do not look for comets or meteors. Just look at the color of the empty air. See how soft it is? How the darkness doesn't just fall, but wraps around the world like a heavy velvet blanket. The purple haze is a signal that the atmosphere is charged. It is the color of transition, the color of royalty returning home. The stage is lit. The orchestra is tuned. The audience of animals is watching. And now, the curtain begins to rise. Now, the alignment is complete. In the invisible architecture of the solar system, a straight line has been drawn. The Earth, the Wanderer, and the great shadow behind it are connected by a thread of gravity. The ancient prophets called this the Day of Judgment. For thousands of years, humans have trembled at those words. We have been taught to imagine fire and brimstone. We imagine angry gods descending from the clouds to punish us for our sins, to topple our towers and silence our noise. We treat the return of the architects as a sentencing. But what if we have been translating the word wrong all this time? What if judgment does not mean punishment? What if it simply means evaluation? Think of a teacher returning to the classroom after a long absence. They do not walk in to scream at the students. They walk in to look at the chalkboard. They pick up the notebooks left on the desks. They want to see what the students have learned while they were away. What if this moment is not an execution, but an exam. And what if we are passing it? Look at us. Look at what we have built in the short time we have been alone. We have cured diseases that once wiped out empires. We have connected the entire globe in a web of instant thought. We have taught silicon to think and light to carry our voices. We have even begun to leave the cradle of Earth, sending our own metal wanderers to Mars and beyond. Enlil might have feared our power, but Enki would be smiling. What if the architects are looking down at us right now, not with anger, but with pride? Imagine a parent watching a child take their first uncertain steps. The child wobbles. The child falls. The child makes a mess. But the parent does not punish the child for growing. They watch with a quiet, fierce love, waiting to see if the child can stand back up. The energy passing over the earth tonight is not a weapon. It is a scan, a deep, penetrating look into the collective soul of humanity. They are checking our work. They are seeing that we have touched the fire of the stars, and we have not burned the house down yet. We are still here. We are still trying. And perhaps in the silence of this great alignment, the verdict is already being written in the stars. And the verdict is simply, proceed. We have watched the movies. We expect the contact to be loud. We wait for ships to land on the lawns of presidents, for speeches to be broadcast on every channel, for a handshake between species. But the Sumerians wrote that the gods spoke to the heart of the priests. They described wisdom entering the mind like a sudden breeze entering a closed room. What if we are looking for the handshake in the wrong place? What if the meeting is not happening on the news, but inside you? Think about the moments of sudden clarity you have felt recently. The strange, unexplainable urge to pause. The sudden desire to forgive an old enemy. The flash of inspiration that solves a problem you have carried for years. What if these are not just random neurons firing? What if the proximity of the architects creates a field of consciousness? A mental atmosphere that we are all breathing in right now. The ancient judgment was not a courtroom trial. It was a resonance check. If two tuning forks are perfectly matched, striking one will make the other sing, even across a room. Maybe they are simply striking the note of wisdom, and they are waiting to see which human minds vibrate in harmony with it. You might feel it tonight as you drift toward sleep. A heaviness lifting from your shoulders. A quiet certainty that the world is not ending, but changing. The noise of the day, the traffic, the internet, the arguments, it all feels very far away now. It feels small. In its place, there is a vast, cool space. A quiet room in your mind, where the lights are dim and the air is still. This is where the contact happens. Not in the sky, but in the silence between your thoughts. They are not here to invade. They are here to inspire. And perhaps the voice of the architects sounds exactly like your own inner voice, finally finding the courage to be peaceful. And then, just as quietly as it began, the moment passes. In the sky above, the great invisible line begins to break. The perfect geometry of the alignment loosens. Comet ATLAS, the Red Wanderer, has delivered its message. It has flashed its signal. And now, obeying the silent laws of gravity, it begins its long turn back toward the darkness. It doesn't vanish instantly. It fades. Like a candle being carried down a long hallway, the light grows smaller and smaller with each passing night. The violet glow of the horizon softens back into the familiar deep blue of a sleeping world. You can feel the change in the air. For weeks there was a tension, a sense of holding on. But now, that tension snaps gently, like a rubber band relaxing. The pressure lifts from the atmosphere. The hum of the earth settles down into a quiet lullaby. The animals in the forest lower their heads and return to their rest. The whales in the deep ocean return to their old songs. The check-in is complete. The inspection is over. The architects are withdrawing. They have seen what they needed to see. They have scanned the beacon we lit. They have measured the height of our towers, and they have listened to the rhythm of our hearts. And they have decided to let us continue. There is a profound sense of safety in this departure. It is the feeling of a storm that has passed without breaking the windows. The feeling of a long night ending as the first gray light touches the window pane. We are still here. The earth is still spinning. The sun will rise tomorrow just as it always has. The cycle continues. But we are different now. We know that the sky is not empty. We know that we were visited, even if only by a shadow and a thought. The wanderer drifts away, carrying the story of 2025 back to the deep dark, to store it in the archives of the cosmos until the next cycle begins. Let it go. Watch it fade. The danger, if there ever was danger, has passed. The ship is gone. The star has faded. The sky looks empty again. But emptiness is an illusion. We often feel lonely on this little blue marble. We look out at the black void, and we feel small, isolated, adrift in a universe that doesn't care. We think that teachers have left us to figure it out on our own. But what if we have never been alone? Not for a single second. What if the silence of space is not the silence of absence, but the silence of restraint? Think about a parent watching a child sleep. They stand in the doorway, hidden by the shadows of the hall. They don't make a sound. They don't move. They barely breathe. They stay quiet, not because they are gone, but because they don't want to wake the child. They want the child to rest. What if the watchers never truly left? What if they are still here, right now, just out of sight? Perhaps they are waiting in the dark shadow of a crater on the far side of the moon, their instruments silent, watching the lights of our cities. Perhaps they are resting in the crushing pressure of the deepest ocean trenches where we cannot go. Perhaps they are woven into the wind itself. They are the guardians who stay in the hallway. They promised to return when we were ready. But perhaps the truth is that they never pack their bags. They simply step back to give us room to grow. Room to make mistakes. Room to become who we are meant to be. You are safe. You are watched over. There is a protective circle around this planet, drawn by hands much older and stronger than ours. Nothing can cross it without their permission. The Wanderer came to check the lock and found it holding fast. So you can let go now. You do not need to worry about the sky falling. There are giants holding it up. They are there, in the dark, in the quiet, keeping the vigil so that you can close your eyes and drift away. And so, under the watchful eyes of the ancient stars, the story comes to a rest. Look up one last time in your mind. The sky is not a ceiling. It is a blanket, a vast velvet covering pinned with points of diamond light, wrapped around the shoulders of the world to keep it warm. The comets have passed. The planets continue their slow, silent dance. The great clockwork of the universe ticks on, rhythmic and steady, a heartbeat that has never stopped for billions of years. You are part of that rhythm now. You are not just a person lying in a room. You are a traveler on a great blue ship, drifting through a sea of peaceful dark. The ship is sturdy. The course is set. The architects have checked the engines, and everything is well. There is nothing left to solve. There is nothing left to wonder about. The questions of the day have floated away like dust motes in a sunbeam. All that remains is the drift. Feel the gravity holding you. It is the embrace of the earth, pulling you gently down, grounding you, keeping you safe. Deep, slow, ancient. The stars above are the night lights left on by the old teachers. They burn quietly to let you know that the dark is not empty. It is just resting. Close your eyes. Let the heavy curtain of the night fall completely. The cycle is complete. The warning was just a whisper to say you are alive. And now, the whisper fades into the silence of a perfect sleep. Drift. Float. Rest. You are safe in the cradle of the sky. Good night.